Season 1, Episode 1 of Photo Finish.
With your hosts, Captain Tyler
and Skip Skipkowski.
We're going to be breaking down the Tudor United Sports Car Series Championship, a little bit to what to expect for this year, the inaugural race of the season, the Rolex 24 Hours of Daytona, who's racing, how you can watch this race, and who we think is going to win. So in this first part here, I think that we should go over what Sports Car Series is, who it's governed by, what it is today, what it used to be, just a little brief history. What IMSA is the governing body, and that stands for the International Motorsports Association. It was founded in 1969 with John Bishop and his wife Peggy, with the help of Bill France Sr., who you would know from NASCAR.
Yeah, Big Bill was, it's no secret the France organization knew how to make money. And Bill France at that point financed much of IMSA's offerings, and at one point owned nearly 75% of the stock, basically owned 75% of the stock, and Bishop and his group retained just 25%.
They really didn't get going until about 1970 when they started getting into GT racing. Before that, they did a little Formula Ford and Formula V, but then in 1970 he formed the GT series. Camel came on as the title sponsor, and you got your Camel GT, your Camel GT lights, and it was really the big heyday with the series. Mm-hmm. He was in charge until 1987, where he had to go under heart bypass surgery, made him rethink his priorities, and then he stepped down. It went through a couple different owners until in 1999, when IMSA had become so large, had to break off, and that's when we got the Rolex Grand Am Series and the American Le Mans Series, which were the two competing forces.
Yeah, and it seemed kind of silly. You had a lot of good cars, you had a lot of good racers, but you're never going to see all the cars in one spot at the same time. Mm-hmm. It's kind of like my dad's bigger than your dad.
Yeah.
So it was kind of, and you go back to Champ Car and Indy Car, same thing. My car is better than your car. Well, not really. Unfortunately, it's all about politics sometimes, and who's in control and who wants to be king. And unfortunately, that did happen. The good news, though, is
now, last year in 2014, we had the inaugural season of the Tudor United Sports Car Series, which was then again governed by IMSA. Mm-hmm. It was the combining of both the Grand Am Rolex Series and the American Le Mans Series, combining their two championships into one. And I felt last year's competition was really good. Had some growing pains. Some teams left in the middle, some teams came, but I really thought it was good competition. Now IMSA is in charge, the governing body for, like I said, the Tudor United Sports Car Championship, the Continental Tire Sports Car Challenge, the Cooper Tires Prototype Lights, and the IMSA GT3 Cup Challenge and GT Cup Challenge Canada.
We are less than a week away from the season opening of IMSA's season. And of course, that's the 24 Hours of Daytona. That's the Rolex 24. Of course, that's at Daytona, Florida, the Daytona International Speedway. January 24th and 25th. And the neat part about that is that they do run all classes in one race. So you're going to have the Daytona prototype cars, you're going to have the prototype challenge cars, as well as the GT Le Mans and the GT Daytona. So you're going to have all four classes running on the same track, running at varying speeds, running 24 hours a day, running into each other.
A lot.
And history has told us that it happens. Quite honestly, there are tremendous speed differentials between the prototypes and the GT Daytonas. So there are going to be times when, quite honestly, going into a corner, you are not going to see the car that's going to be pulling ahead of you, pulling out of the corner. It's just unbelievable differences.
I think the top speed with prototypes is 200, and the top speed for the Daytona GTs is 180.
Well, and if you think about that for a minute, if you're driving a road car and you're traveling 70 miles an hour and someone passes you at 100, it kind of takes your breath away.
It does.
You do the, oh my goodness, what was that? Mm-hmm. So if you can imagine that happening for 24 hours with the stress, with the fatigue, with not only stress and fatigue on the cars, but the drivers. Things happen.
They do.
Things happen. Now, of course, that's not the only race this season. We're just going to do a real quick run-through of the races for the season. Like we said, you're going to have 24 hours of Daytona on the 24th. We're going to go all the way to March 21st. That'll be the next race.
Pretty good size break.
It is a good size break, and I think that's kind of cool because you're going to be in a position after the 24 hours of Daytona where you're going to say, that worked. That did not work. Okay, so what are we going to do?
Mm-hmm.
So you do have some development time, and I have not read anything at all that talks about limitations on development much in the same way that you find in Formula One. So they certainly will have an opportunity to do some development.
And I believe there is a test in between that time at Sebring so that they can work on the cars. If I'm not mistaken, I think it's 2 weeks beforehand, but I can double check.
Oh, that's fine.
But yeah, they'll be able to develop the cars throughout there. Now, there are limitations on what can be changed through IMSA.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes if one manufacturer is dominating too much, kind of like Corvette did last year, there was a power reduction. The other teams gain a little bit, either in power or in weight or in increased downforce, so that even though you have all these cars running, it's a lot more balanced.
Well, and that was part of the reason that this particular organization has thrived and has gone through so many changes, is because it's all been based on trying to keep some sense of equality between the teams. At one point, it was very much concerned that it was going to be overrun by manufacturers, and changes were made. Not to say that manufacturers aren't a necessary part of the series. I guess the point was you want to continue to have the privateers involved, and that's why we've gone through so many changes, which has really made this sport grow. And I guess the nice part about that is when we go to Sebring, I think you will see some changes. I think you may not see a noticeable change to a car. Obviously, they're not going to bring a brand new car to Sebring. They're not going to be able to change, much as far as the drivetrain of the car. Obviously, they can change gearing and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
But I think what you're going to find too is they're not only going to look at the car, but they're going to look at the team. How did we prepare for this? How did we prepare for that? Did our pit stops go as smoothly as we thought they were going to be? Were we as prepared when the car came in? Because we've seen in the past, car comes in after so many hours. They do a complete brake job.
Yeah, they'll take off the brakes. They're quick connects. Take off your brakes and it changes your trip stop time from like 20 seconds to a minute and a half, and then you go back out there.
Mm-hmm. So I'm sure that there's going to be some analysis of that as well as the car itself. So, but that's going to be cool. Then the next time that you're going to see all 4 classes together is going to be in June. But in that time, you're going to have 3 other races.
You're going to have the Tequila Patronus sports car showcase done at the Long Beach Street Circuit, similar to where they used to run the Formula One Grand Prix and where they run the IndyCar Series now.
No, and I don't mean to jump in there, but the Tequila Patron sports car showcase on the streets of Long Beach, California, that kind of makes me think of one person.
Who?
We were just talking about him. Privateer, gentleman racer, actor.
Patrick Dempsey.
I'm sure Patrick got his start on something very similar to this, and that's where he got his exposure as far as being a driver. And I'm trying to remember, because I remember when he raced in the streets and crashed the car, and it was so much fun because he got out and he was like, "This is great! I can't believe it." But I know that he takes this quite seriously. It's just not a fun thing. Mm-hmm. But you do, if for an hour and 40 minutes, if you're in Long Beach, California, there is no better place to be.
Yeah, because it's the same weekend they're also doing the IndyCar, and then they also do a celebrity Pro-Am race where you get different actors all running in safety modified Toyotas, running on the circuit. It's a lot of fun. Mm-hmm. It's kind of a carnival-like scene, and during that race, you will see the prototypes and the GTLM.
And you're going to see a lot of delusions of grandeur.
Yes. It's narrow. It's tight. There's probably 3 real good overtaking places, but we'll get into more detail when that race comes closer. Then after that, you have the Continental Tire Monterey Grand Prix. And what's interesting about that is you will have all 4 cars there,
but
not running at the same time. You're going to have 2 2-hour races where you'll have the Prototype Challenge and the GT Daytonas, the 2 Pro-Am series running. Then you will have the Prototype and the GT LM class races right after that. I'm going to say it's a smaller track, and that's where this is held in Monterey, California. And I think that's the best way to run it. They did this last year. The 2 races were a lot of fun, and I'm looking forward to that one as well.
And when you think about that, that's probably really smart because, again, on a small course, tremendous closing speeds, and it's not always how fast you can go, but it's how quick you can go from go to stop. and your prototype cars, quite honestly, do have the advantage there. So, yeah, that's going to be cool. But, now, thank goodness they're coming back to the heartland of America.
Yes.
Going to Detroit.
It's the Chevrolet Sports Car Classic run at the Raceway on the Belle Isle in Detroit, Michigan. Funny, interesting fact about that track is F1 used to run the Detroit Grand Prix, and they designed this track to replace the street circuit. But financial and political things didn't allow F1 to run there, so now we run sports cars.
Perfect.
Right. And I think it's a pretty fun track. Last year's race was a real close one. Last lap passes, bumping and banging, a lot of fun. In that race, you will have the Prototype Challenge, and the GT Daytonas. After that, we will go to...
We are back to my favorite, endurance racing, 6 hours. 6 hours at the Glen. It's what we've always called it. Now it's called Saline's 6 hours of the Glen. Watkins Glen, New York, it's a sleepy little town. Formula One history there as well. It has got to be one of the most enjoyable racetracks to watch from your home. Beautiful settings. There's no way that you can see, the entirety of the track. Trees and gentle sloping hills, and it's just an incredible place to be. And it's going to be a blast because you're going to have all those cars. The only thing that I guess, if you could really bottle and bring to your home, or the one thing that's missing from any type of broadcast, truly is the sound and sensation of the racetrack. Granted, the images are far superior when you can, get the instant replay and you can get the big shot and you can see him coming from a long distance and 3 other corners before he actually gets to you. But you can't replace the sensation of those cars and the sounds of those cars and how those sounds reverberate inside your body when they go by. But that's going to be a tremendous race. It is going to be a lot of fun, and it is going to be June 28th. So I want to make sure that you have some time to do that. And then we get back into another 3-class race.
Which we have is the Mobile One Sports Car Canadian Grand Prix. It's a 2-hour and 40-minute race at the Canadian Tire Motorsport Park in Ontario. It's going to have your prototype challenge, and your GTLM. So no Pro-Am GT racing. Once again, it's a smaller track, and that's why they don't run all the classes. And what you'll notice is throughout the season, there's 12 races, but all the teams will only compete in 10. A little different than last year. Last year there was 14 races. The Prototype Challenge, I think, only ran in 9, but the GTLM ran in all of them. So this is a little easier on the teams for setting aside money, especially with the Privateer Series.
Sure.
Then after that, we go to the Northeast Grand Prix. It's a 2-hour race, which is only going to have the Prototype Challenge and the GT Daytonas, and that's going to be run at Lime Rock, and they're going to be back on the calendar after not being on there last year. Lime Rock's, it's a pretty fun track. Once again, smaller. And that one's going to be on July 25th. The Canadian one that I mentioned earlier is on July 12th.
So you got a 2-week break. That gives them enough time to kind of get their stuff together. What is one on a Saturday and one on a Sunday? Okay.
And then after that, we go to the Continental Tire Road race showcase. And that will have all 4 of the classes, but it's only a 2-hour and 40-minute race, kind of a sprint at Road America.
Let me ask you this: when you're doing a sprint race like that, and I'm really kind of pointing more towards the prototypes more than anything else. When you're running at a sprint duration like that, it just makes me, it just takes so many things out of. It just takes so many things out of that challenge. And I guess my question is, when they do that, obviously you're running with 2 drivers instead of 4. I just wonder how they change the car. I mean, are they permitted to run with anything lighter or lesser, so that obviously it's not running for 24 hours, it's only running for 2.
Well, maybe it's changed a little bit in the sense, because I know when I've been watching the 24 hours or the endurance races, they are saying these are just 24-hour sprints. They're running the same pace, the same way that they were doing for these 2-hour, 40-minute races or so on. So I don't think there's so much change in how the car is set up. Maybe you turn up the engine power a little bit so that it runs harder, so you don't have to worry about, hey, well, I can push for the entire race, as opposed to let's push in this segment, let's back off a little bit. Maybe so much more in strategy than I think in the car itself.
Okay, well that makes sense, because you're right, and it was not always a 24-hour sprint that we talk about today. Okay, well that's cool. So Elkhart Lake, Road America, beautiful course, and then we're back into Virginia.
Yes, so we have the race. It's the Oak Tree Grand Prix at VIR, Virginia International Speedway, on August 29th, and the Continental race is on August 9th. So we get a little bit of a shorter break this time. Now this one will only have the GT cars, the GTLM and the GTD cars. And what's interesting about VIR is it's a private-owned track, and it's kind of run like a country club. You can buy land on the track, you can drive around it. It's pretty cool. And it's an older style track. There's a great large runoff spaces. It's a lot of fun to watch. They got the S's, then they have the Oak Tree turn. Sadly, the Oak Tree was damaged in a lightning storm, but they have replaced it with acorns from that oak tree. Excellent. Where people have collected, and they brought them in. Then after that, we have the Lone Star Le Mans, which is run at the Circuit of Americas in Austin, Texas on September 19th. Once again, it will have all 4 classes. That's where they host the U.S. Grand Prix. Right.
And do they have a different layout for the EFI versus this series?
No, it's the exact same track layout.
Okay.
So it's pretty cool, and you'll see the speed differences. If you're able to watch both the U.S. Grand Prix and this race, you'll see the turning rate, how fast they go through the corners, how fast they accelerate, the different sounds. It's pretty cool to compare the 2 series in that sense. Okay. Both the Oak Tree Grand Prix and the Le Mans, these Lone Star Le Mans, are 2-hour and 40-minute races.
And then the greatest thing of all, is we're going to end the season with another endurance race. It will be 10 hours. It is the Petite Le Mans. It's going to be at Road Atlanta. It will be in October, so it's not going to be... Hopefully it won't be freezing, but it's not going to be warm. Warm in the sense of what it's like in July or August. The nice thing about Road Atlanta is just another fabulous course, a lot of history. 10 hours. It is going to literally... I can see this as a 10-hour sprint. Some other people may say they can sprint for 24 hours. I think you can sprint for 10. So I think that's going to be a blast to go to, and particularly one to watch.
The other interesting thing with this season is you have 2 championships in one. The endurance races, the Petite Le Mans, the Salem 6 hours at the Glen, the 12 hours of Sebring, and the 24 hours of Daytona are their own championships in themselves. They're the North American Endurance Cup. Okay. And then you have the other 12 races in total that is another championship in itself. So you'll see teams only at those 4 races, drivers only at those 4 races, but then you'll have your teams that will run all 10 of the 12 races, competing for a championship and such.
Okay. Well, we know that the 24 Hours of Daytona is going to have all classes. So let me just kind of go into each of the classes here, just in general. Prototype are my favorites. Those are the most sexy design cars. They're the most aerodynamic cars. They are single seat. They are enclosed drive cabin.
For the most part.
They're mostly V8s. However, this is the part that I love so much. You've got a V8, you've got a V6 turbo, you've got an inline 4 turbo, you've got another V8, another 3 liters V6. So there's a wide range of engine configurations out there.
Even a factory diesel.
And the part about that is, if we take a look, the overall class winning team last year was Action Express, and they're using the Coyote chassis with the Corvette 5.5 liter V8. Chip Ganassi, which those guys know how to win. They've won about everything they've ever entered. They're one of the leading drivers, Scott Pruitt. Obviously, he knows what it takes. They're running a Riley Mark 26. So that that just kind of tells you Riley's been in the business a little while too, since that's chassis 26. But they're running a 3.5 liter V6 engine from Ford.
Turboed.
Yes, indeed. You got the funkiest car out on there. That's the Delta Wing. That's the Delta Wing car. And they're using a 1.9 liter inline 4-cylinder turbocharged gasoline or diesel?
Gasoline.
That is the gasoline engine. You've got a Ligier, which we haven't seen in a while. You got with the Judd running a 3.6 liter V8. We've got Speed Source, which is the Mazda group, running a Skyactiv diesel. It's a 1.4 liter engine.
And the fun thing about the Skyactiv diesel is almost all of it is stock, in a sense that this is the same engine that you have in your Skyactiv Mazda 6. But there are a few pieces have been replaced to handle all the pressure, and they had a hard time with reliability last year. It was producing so much torque that it was just blowing itself up. Eventually, toward the end of the season, they were finally completing the entire races, and I'm looking forward to good things with them.
Well, and the thing that's really been a trend has been the diesel engine in endurance racing.
You got the Audis that are running the diesels, and they've been winning the 24-hour Le Mans. I think they've won it 6 times in a row.
Yeah, it's getting a little boring.
It is, in a sense. I mean, they've had some competition from other teams, but we'll talk about that when we get to our special segment for the 24 Hours of Le Mans.
Okay. And then you've got, one of my favorites, which is Wayne Taylor. He's running the Dallara chassis with the Corvette, and he's got 2 of his own sons and Max Angelelli running as a driver. So, if we take a look at some names that, some people are going to recognize: Christian Fittipaldi, Sebastian Bourdais, Max Pappas. You got a couple of Americans in that mix with Dane Cameron and Eric Curran. Scott Pruitt, obviously. If I go down, Scott Dixon is a name I recognize. Tony Kanaan.
Jamie McMurray and Carl Larson from NASCAR fame, running in the Prototype Series just for the 24 hours. Chip Ganassi runs 2 cars, the 01 and the 02. The 02 is a team of just his drivers from other classes like IndyCar and for NASCAR. And they've won overall a couple times as well.
Which is really kind of cool because, that's... I mean, wouldn't that be an awesome perk? By the way, if you do good, we'll let you run a Daytona. All right, I'm in. Okay, where do I sign up?
Yes. And that's the team with the 2 NASCAR drivers and the 2 IndyCar drivers.
Now, is that what I think that is right there? Catherine Legg?
Yes, that is female racing for the Delta team, and she'll be running all the races for them with Memo Rojas, who used to run for Ganassi with Scott Pruitt. Didn't have a good year last year, a couple of accidents, let his timber get ahead of him, and Chip let him go.
Okay. Well, there's a couple people that are from my past. Dorsey Schrader. I really enjoyed watching Dorsey run in other series.
He's typically one of the announcers for Fox and covering the races, but this year he will be competing in the 24.
And the other thing that's really kind of cool too is he's running a BMW 5-liter V8, and Dorsey is tied heavily to Ford Motorsport, so it's kind of cool to see him running something other than the blue oval cars.
Another neat name you might recognize is Alex Brundle, the son of what is his name now?
Yes,
Martin Brundle.
Martin Brundle
From Formula One fame. He'll be racing one race with the in the prototype Ligier,
with the Ligier
in the Krone Racing. He ran the endurance races last year, but this year it's looking like he's only doing the 24.
Yep.
And
well, there's a couple more names that stand out. AJ Allmendinger, he's running one race, which is obviously this race.
Or Michael Shank, and they've just switched over from a Daytona prototype to the P2 class, and they're really excited for that. Shank's been heavily tied with Ford as well, and now he's running a Honda engine.
Yeah, it's going to stir things up a little bit. Now, if we go just a little bit further, I'm looking. Just some guy, he ran a whole lot of races in Formula One. Rubens Barrichello. It's good to see that he is still active.
Running for the Skyworks team in one race. This team is the number 7. They'll be only running the 24, it looks like, right now. Hopefully they can come back for another race, but they're only committed to one.
Oh, yeah, it's going to be fun.
Yes,
it's going to be fun. Okay, that's a pretty good wrap-up of the Daytona prototype.
And LP2 for the prototype class. They're going to be competing for the overall win. I think it's going to be some of the more exciting races overall there. And next we'll move on to the Prototype Challenge.
Good deal.
So the next class is the Prototype Challenge. It's a Pro-Am class, so you have a mixture of professional drivers and weekend warriors, guys who've I've got money, let's go racing.
So it's not necessarily an entire team of professional drivers.
Right.
And an entire team of amateur drivers. Typically it's an amateur driver and a couple of pros.
And the amateur driver has to drive a certain amount of time for the team to actually get classification at the end of the race.
Right.
I know last year, I think it was the Core Autosports, missed it by 30 seconds and didn't get classification for a race.
That sucks.
It was a big disappointment for them. What's interesting with it, besides being the Pro-Am, is they are also one chassis, one engine. The Orca FLM09 chassis, which is an open cockpit prototype design,
is powered by a Chevrolet, basically a Corvette engine. It's the 6.2 liter LS3, which is it's a proven engine. And the nice part about it is, it's not such a rare or high end piece that it's you can get what you need.
Yeah, it's a great introduction into running prototype races. Like we mentioned earlier, the team that has Rubens Barrichello, they typically run in this class. They are the Starworks, and they were real competitive along with the Core Autosports and the BAR1 Motorsports team. Those were the real competitors in the... I like the design of these cars. They're a little bit slower than the prototype cars in a sense, but they're about the same speed in the turns as the GT cars. So you'll see them slowing them on the straightaways, but in the turns they'll be right with them.
Right, and I'm sure most of the a portion of that obviously is going to be an engine, and a portion of that is just going to be an aerodynamic drag with the open cockpit versus the closed cockpit that you're going to have in the prototype. So there's a little variation. And again, the nice part about it is, it can almost be a turnkey type deal. If you've got enough money, you want to go racing, you can go racing at the highest level within a class where all the cars are somewhat the same. So it comes down to the ability of the team to manage and the ability of the drivers to perform. So it could be a lot of fun.
Yeah. The drivers you're going to see are going to rotate in and out. There's some drivers that will run all the races, like in every series, but this is where you're going to see the most parity in names. So keep an eye on it. It will get some TV coverage, and it's going to be a lot of fun to watch the races.
And I kind of go through these, and I guess the reason I don't recognize as many names right off the bat is because we've got such a mix of pro and am.
Mm-hmm.
And when I take a look, there's a lot of people in there that are just in for one race, and I'm sure that those are just going to be here for the 24 Hours Le Mans, or 24 Hours of Daytona. But that's cool. Now we've got 2 more classes left.
The GT cars, and we'll go over those next.
Okay, the next class of cars we're going to talk about really is going to be the GTLM, or the GT Le Mans class of cars. These are going to be cars that you're going to see and you're going to recognize because they are full-bodied road cars. It's going to be the Ferrari 458 Italia, the GT2. We've all seen it. It's the beautiful red car with the yellow horse.
Yes. The Aston Martin Vantage, James Bond's car. Then the BMW Z4 GTE.
Then good old American muscle, the 5.5 liter V8 Chevrolet Corvette CR7R. And then, of course, the Porsche 911 RSR. And that's pretty much what that field is going to be like. The big thing is going to be driver participation.
They're all these classes are all factory backed. These are your all pro GT cars, and then the same cars that you will see competing in the 24 Hours of Le Mans in other European classes. It's considered some of the best GT racing in the world, and it's a lot of fun to watch. I'm the bigger fan of the GT, as where you're the big fan of the prototype stuff. Mm-hmm. A little interesting and sad fact was last year's champion, the Vipers, won, and then less than 48 hours after announced they were pulling out of the series.
And that may have something to do with the parent company, being the bridesmaid instead of the bride. So, the little girl in the red dress is supposed to be the one on top. So we'll let that ride. The other thing that I noticed in here too, and I'm just taking a look, the AF Course team running the Ferrari 458 is only going to be attending the 24-hour series.
Yes.
So they're only going to be at Daytona. Then it looks like everyone else is going to at least participate in multiples, if not all. It looks like the Aston Martin's going to be in 4. It looks like the BMW team is going to be in all. It looks like that you're going to have a Corvette at all the races. Porsche is going to be at all the races. Now, the Ferrari team, the RSI Competizione.
Competizione. Italian, hard to say.
Yeah. They're going to be the Ferrari representative for all races, and then you have a second Porsche team representing all races as well. So you do have multiple Ferraris during the year if you include the first race.
The other interesting fact with the GTLM, it's the only series in the Tudor United Sports Car Championship that has different tires backing. Everyone else uses Continental tires, but when you get into the GTLM, you have Falcon, which is one of the Porsche teams. They're the only ones running the Falcon. Then you have the Michelins, which are on the Corvettes, and the Porsches are running Continental in that sense. So you not only have factory competition, but tire manufacturer competition.
So there's big money going all around.
Exactly.
Okay.
And like you mentioned, some of the names in the GTLM series, they're a little more recognizable. The Corvettes that you see here in this class are the same Corvettes that run at the Le Mans series. There's even Giancarlo Fisichella of F1 fame, who is the factory Ferrari driver for them.
Former F1 driver who, would rather sit in the pits at Ferrari than drive anything else if he had the chance, and proved it by doing just that. But it's good to see that he's driving a red car and spending some time. And you're right. There are people that we recognize. We just don't think about them every day.
Graham Rahal is doing a one-off race with them. You've also got Jan Magnussen, who is the factory Corvette driver. You've got
Olivier Beretta, which I've seen him before. Wolf Heinzler. They're Patrick Long. There's a lot of people that we're going to see, but we're going to be, if you follow along with us, you're going to be more exposed to them as time goes on, particularly if you have every opportunity to see each race. And then the last grouping in the 4 classes is going to be the GT Daytona. And the biggest differences in the Daytona versus the GTLM is going to be what?
It's the Pro-Am series, similar as to the Prototype Challenge to the Prototype. This is GT Daytona to GT Element. So you have at least one pro driver and one amateur driver. And like with the Prototype Challenge, the amateur driver has to run a certain time. It's a lot of fun racing. These cars don't have the factory backing. This is your privateer racers.
Okay.
Which is really what IMSA wanted to be with John. It's a lot of fun too. These cars are more of what you saw in the Grand Am series and their GTs. So you're going to see the Porsche 911 GT versus the Porsche 911 RSR, the Audi R8, which I think looks really good as a race car, not as well as in a road car. But you still also have the Vipers running in here with the GT3s.
Yeah, you still have one, which is great.
Yes. American muscle in there. The Ferrari Italian GT3, the Aston Martins with their 007 and 009 numbers, of course, for Bond in that sense. It's a lot of fun. Turner Motorsport and their Z4, they've been running in this GT class since its creation back in the Rolex series, winning a couple championships. It's a lot of fun. There's some names you'll recognize in here, like Jeff Siegel.
And I hate to say it, I think that Z4 is one good-looking car. Borset is going to be driving one race. I imagine that's going to be the 24-hour race to give them that extra seat time that they need. But, if you take a look at, the Ferrari 458, the Viper, you've got Mark Goosen. That's somebody that we've seen before. Bryce Miller, you've seen before in the Paul Miller Racing in the R8s. So there's a lot of good racing names in there, and there's two spots open, one for you and one for me, with the TRG AMR North America Aston Martin class. They've got two seats open. They haven't announced those yet. I'm sure that they'll do those probably within the next couple of days, because you've got to get some people in those cars.
And that's, we're talking about having all these drivers. It's something with endurance racing. There's limitations on how much time the drivers can do for safety reasons, of course. You're going to see the cars go around the track for 24 hours with this race, but you won't see the same driver running the 24. I think you're limited to 16 hours, and I think it's 8 hours at one time. Well,
and the thing that you run into, too, is obviously the drivers, they will do a stint. They will do a double stint. Usually that's what you're going to find in a class where you are supported properly, or a team that you're supported properly. You're never really going to be in the car longer than you should be. Obviously going from day to night, which is difficult. And
then back to day.
Back to day is hard enough. So you want to be in a position where you do have your faculties about you. Obviously 24 hours of racing being up is difficult. Racing 24 hours is nearly impossible. So it's very, very important that you do get some time where you can kind of clear your head, eat properly, do the right things for your body, so that you can keep your concentration level high enough to not only be safe but be competitive and can be aggressive and really be a racing driver. So there's a lot to it. There's a lot more to it.
And it's interesting from a strategy standpoint, because a lot of times they'll run from the start to halfway point, and then from the halfway point they're going to run backwards, calculating who's going to be at the car at the end, what times you're going to need to run. And it's pretty interesting from that, I'm going to outsmart you instead of outrace you.
And you're right. That is the crazy thing about it is in the old days it was you had a choice. You were either going to be the jackrabbit, and your intention was, in a two-car team, is you're going to have one car that's just going to be balls to the walls the whole time, and see if you can't pull your competitor to make the same kind of foolish mistakes that you're making with this car, which is the sacrificial car. You've decided that this car is not going to win the race.
No.
This is the car that's just going to tempt everybody else to push their equipment to the point that hopefully they break, and then your second car is just going to be there, at a good pace, but it's never ever going to be the leader until
the end.
Whether that be halfway, three-quarter, or the final lap. And we've certainly seen a number of occasions where cars have really been outstanding
until the end.
And cars that have been awful, but their teams have put them together and put them together and put them together and kept them there until the end, only to fail in the last final laps. I think of Tony Stewart's car.
Yes. that was an interesting moment. The rear suspension was failing. It was the leading car. It was ahead by laps.
Mm-hmm.
And they wedged a piece of wood into the suspension to keep it going.
Mm-hmm.
And then it just, maybe, I think it was less than an hour to go, it finally gave up and he was stranded out in the bus stop.
Yeah.
Which gives us a good lead into talking about the track and the history.
The track is incredible. And we'll go into how long it's been around, how many races have been there, but okay. When we think about Daytona and we think about that first race of the year, I automatically think about the 24 hours.
But it's not always been the case. In its original inception, it was a distance of 1,000 kilometers. Basically
620 miles, give or take a few. And you're right. And the reason that they did that is that was the standard for international racing at the time, was about 1,000 kilometers.
Mm-hmm. You still had the 24 Le Mans, but it was special. It was put up on a pedestal and admired. And then we went from the 1,000 kilometers to a 3-hour endurance for a couple of years,
Mm-hmm.
then a 2,000 kilometer, and then to a 24-hour duration from 66 to 71.
And then the fuel crisis kind of got in the way.
Yay.
Yeah, and it seemed vulgar to be. Quite honestly, there were a lot of people thought it was vulgar to race at all.
Mm-hmm.
That the economy was such in a condition, and that fuel consumption, fuel availability was so poor that it was thought, why race at all? But then again, it's racing. Come on, we got to have motorsport.
We have to have our entertainment to take our mind off of the situation we were in.
Mm-hmm.
So then we had a 6-hour duration for 72, and then now back to the 24-hour that we've had since 73 to present, excluding 74.
Yeah, 74 they just did not race at all. They said, okay, we're just not going to do it. But the really cool part is basically for my lifetime, 24 hours has been the standard. And, we continue to see, the same vehicles in the mix. And to be quite honest with you, Porsche kind of had a stranglehold on the Daytona 24 hours for quite a number of years. I mean, basically, if you go from 1975, and there are going to be a few years in there that things change, but basically from 1975 to 1989,
yeah.
Porsche, if you skipped ahead to 91, Porsche, they pretty much ruled the roost there for 20 years or more.
Mm-hmm.
It's just an amazing series that that Porsche controlled. But as we move closer to the
format we're in now, you'll see a wider diversity. You'll see some Jaguars winning. 92, you had the Nissan R91, their iconic design. Then you get to see some interesting things with sports cars winning, not the prototypes, but actually the GT cars.
Mm-hmm.
94, there was in the Nissan 300ZX. You'll see there's the Viper winning in 2000 overall, and the Corvette, all the way up until 2003, which was the last year we had a GT class win. Once
Mm-hmm.
again, Porsche.
Mm-hmm.
But then since 2004 to present day, it's been a prototype. Mostly, honestly, it's been the Daytona prototypes because that's what's run. The 24 American Le Mans didn't run it.
Yeah, and it's primarily, and this is the thing that kind of strikes me, is you go back and you look, the last 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, looks like Riley was the chassis of choice.
Mm-hmm.
But it's been with, and this is the part that I kind of like. I mean, the first Riley win was in 2005. That was with a Pontiac. In 2006, it went to a Lexus, and that was with Ganassi. and then, which is no real surprise. They held on to it for a little bit. But then you had a Riley in 2009 and 10 that was Porsche powered.
With Brumos Porsche, a famous privateer Porsche team. And then after that, we had a BMW, a Ford, a BMW, and then last year, 2014, was the Corvette Daytona prototype.
Yep, in a Coyote chassis, which until today I didn't really realize that they were running more than Dallara and Riley's. And but they're also running Coyotes, which is kind of cool. And an old friend of ours, not personally, but an old friend of ours from racing, Eddie Cheever,
yes,
is running Coyotes, so that's kind of cool.
You know him from Indianapolis 500 win, as well as being one of the staple points with Formula One for America.
Mm-hmm.
I think he holds the record for the most races run by an American,
Mm-hmm.
Which is pretty cool. And like I said, last year's winner was the Action Express 5 car with Juan Barbosa, Christian Fittipaldi, and Sebastian Bourdais.
Yeah, they had a little bit of talent there.
Yes.
So that's all good.
And they also were the champions for the season.
Mm-hmm.
So started off strong and continued to be strong. Now, how far are we covering in these 24 hours in mileage? It varies in a sense from how far, because you're basing it off speed, whether there's cautions, but around about 2,400 miles.
Oh, I got you. I wasn't quite sure I understood what your question was. Yeah, the 24 hours is going to be in the 2,000 to 2,400 miles, depending upon, and maybe a little bit further, depending upon the number of cautions.
Mm-hmm.
Because last year's race, which was certainly it had its fair share. They ran for 24 hours basically, just a few seconds over. The track itself is a little more than 3.5 miles long. It's 3.6 miles. They were able to complete 695 laps in those 24 hours. So their distance was about just a little under 2,500 miles at 2,474. And just to kind of keep that in mind, if you were to drive from LA to New York, or New York to LA, depending upon how you go, that's 2,772 miles. So they're about 300 miles under that distance in 24 hours, or an average speed of just a little bit over 103 miles per hour. That's average racing speed. Now, obviously, those cars are not just going around 103 miles an hour. They're going at 200 miles an hour on the straightaways and quite a bit less in the corners. But that also includes pit stops and yellows and time in, time out, driver changes, brake changes, everything that's going on. So that's a phenomenal feat.
And then the track layout it incorporates both the NASCAR layout that you see at the Daytona 500, but it incorporates the infield. So it is kind of like a road course and an oval mixed together.
Mm-hmm.
So you'll have your front straightaway, which is still the NASCAR straightaway, but instead of going into turn 1, you make a sharp turn at the pit entrance, go in and run your infield section, which is kind of similar to the boot at Watkins Glen. You'll come out of the infield section, get onto NASCAR 2, go down the back straightaway, and go on to then the bus stop chicane. So you'll have your most speed coming out through 2.
And I got to tell you, when they just dive off of the backstretch
mm-hmm.
and roll into the chicane for the bus stop, and they, obviously from the beginning they're throwing crud off of the infield into the driving lane there. It's pretty amazing. And then they whip back up then finish the backstretch, go all the way around turn 3, all the way out of turn 4, roll down the front straightaway, and then slam on the brakes
for turn 1.
They're flying, man. So 103 miles per hour average speed is not a representation of what these cars are doing. They are absolutely screaming down that front straightaway,
mm-hmm.
and it's truly amazing.
It is the infield section. it's tight. There's where you have your 3 hairpin type turns, a little bit of a kink. What's nice about with the Daytona layout, there's good overtaking places all throughout the track. You have turn 1, you've got your first hairpin at turn 3. You've got if you follow them close to the kink, you can get them again with turn 5, and then back onto the straightaway. The bus stop is where you're going to see a lot of daring passes attempted. Key is attempted because if you miss it, you're going to either shortcut it or you're going to go through the grass.
Yep, and I think that you're going to see, you always see some overtaking coming. I think that's turn 4.
Turn 4 with the kink there.
Yep, and particularly you're going to see a lot of things happening when it comes to the actual speed variation between the classes.
Mm-hmm.
You're going to find some cars kind of get caught up there. You're going to find some cars kind of get caught up in turn 5. But then you're really going to see that huge speed differential once they get back out on NASCAR's the oval portion of the track or the tribal portion of the track. It's just going to be like some of these cars are going to be standing still.
It's really interesting because when they're in those turns, you'll see the GT cars run low and the prototypes run high. And it's for that speed differential. You would think you want the faster cars down low, but because they have more downforce, they can run that high lane and pass everyone there. You'll see a lot of overtakes where you'll come into and there's a bunch of GT cars. They're racing for their lead. We got the 2 prototypes coming in, and it's just where do you go in that situation?
And that's always been a problem whenever you run multiple classes on the same course. Is what makes it so interesting for the viewer, but it also makes it you got to have your wits about you because you are going to run up. You're going to be in the prototype class, and you're going to be whizzing along. And you're going to roll into a race in a lesser class, and you kind of have to have your wits about you. But at the same time, the guys in the lesser classes also have to make sure that they are not impeding the progress of the higher classes as well. But it's going to happen. It always happens. It happens every year. Somebody's going to take out a prototype. A prototype's going to take out a privateer.
Feelings are going to be hurt.
And then there's going to be, there are.
And one of the nicer things that the Tudor Sports Car Series has introduced to keep these 4 races easier for the fans to follow is the leader light system. And it's an LED block that's run right behind the number of the car, and it'll actually tell you what position they're running in their individual class. The reds for the pro racing, and then the blues for the pro-am. And it's really helpful when you're out there because you'll think, okay, where is that prototype running in relationship? Because there is 4 races going on at the same time.
And then not only 4 races going on at the same time, that is a huge racetrack.
Yeah. It was, 3.56 miles?
5-6 miles. And it's really, even if you've got a good race going and you bring somebody in to the pits, and they're in pit for 20, 30 seconds, 20, 30 seconds at race speed, those guys can be half a lap ahead of you, maybe a little bit more. And it's really easy to get lost in that pit shuffle. The car that's in the lead, you may think are 3 places back, but the light system and the position system is pretty awesome. Now, as you might imagine, you don't come for a 24-hour race and show up on a Friday and then race all night for the next 24 hours.
No, they do a thing called the Roar before the 24. It's 10 practices over a 4-day weekend. We're going to give you a couple of the numbers from it. Once again, I'll have this linked in the description for the full results that you can read.
Yep. And just to give you an idea, of course, there was a mixture of weather, which is always the case at Daytona. This year, the best of the best, is going to be in the prototype class, and they were James Taylor, his brother,
Ricky Taylor,
and then Angelelli. Their best overall time was 1:39 seconds, 181. And that was in the Minolta Corvette for Wayne Taylor
racing, followed by Barbosa, Fittipaldi, and Bourdais in the Action Express number 5 Corvette, the defending champions.
They continue that with the prototype with Pew, Negre, Allmendinger, and McMurray, and they were a whopping .161 seconds behind. Okay, that was Chip Ganassi's with Felix Sabates.
That was the Michael Shank car.
Oh, I'm sorry, it was a Michael Shank car.
Yeah, they've switched from the Daytona prototype to the LMP2 chassis, which we mentioned earlier.
Okay, cool.
And then we do have the Chip Ganassi teams of Pruitt, Hand, Kimball, Kanaan, and Dixon. And then their other car, the Dixon, Kanaan, Larson's, and McMurray car, being 4th and 5th.
Mm-hmm. Then you have the funkiest car out there, the Delta Wing Racing vehicle with Lag, Rojas, and Chavez.
Then the Visit Florida Daytona prototype with Westbrook, Rockefeller, and Valiente in 7th.
You had Cameron, Curran, Pappas, and Keene in the Action Express LLC.
31. And then, finally, in 9th place, 1 second behind.
The number 7, Hartley, Barrichello, Graves, and Hunter Ray in the Starworks Motorsport.
They're one off for the season so far. Then the Krone Racing 47 of Krone, Pla, Johnson, and Brundle. 11th was the number 2 Tequila Patron EMS prototype with Brown, Van Overback, and Fogarty.
Now, number 12 was the last of the prototypes in this group, and that was the RG Racing Gerwitz, Lewis, and I'm going to go out on a limb and say Vom.
And then from then on, it's a sprinkling of prototype challenges and the prototype cars.
And these guys are going to be really proud because they were the highest of the prototype challenge, and that was Bennett, Braun,
Wilkins, and Gu in the Core Autosport, one of the teams that I feel is going to be competing for the championship in prototype challenge. Then against another prototype challenge with RSR Racing in Cummings, Jonquero, Hawksworth. They're in Hawksworth, you'll know from IndyCar Racing.
Okay.
Then after that, we do get to the prototype 13th in prototype 07 Speed Source Mazdas. Hopefully they'll complete this year, add some reliability, but I think I feel good things, and that was with Miller, Long, Devon, and Tremblay. And
then you go back to a prototype challenge car with Schultes, Van de Zand, Popov, Hundland, and one other driver whose name is cut off. And that was the Starworks Motorsports. That was number 8 vehicle. So we'll get to see those again. And then you had one more prototype with Nunez, Tremblay, and Bomaretto. And that was another Speed Source car.
Yeah, there's 2 Speed Sources with them. There's the 07 and the 7.
Okay.
Tremblay is arriving on both cars, but he will only be classified in one. Then after that is another prototype challenge with Mal Papadola and Adler. Then we get the 50 prototype, Daytona prototype of the 50 Plus Racing Endure for Cure, where we have our Dorsey Schrader, DeFleur, Pace, and Hutton. Now, and with them on practice on Friday, they actually had a pretty wild incident coming out of NASCAR 4. They blew a tire, the car whipped around, and then wound up on its roof. Drivers were okay, but they did limit their practice.
And the next one that really kind of surprised me, BAR1, in a prototype challenge. I'm not real familiar with them. BAR1, though, is a name that we've seen before, so I expect pretty good results from them. That was Plowman, Dumright, Decote, and Ware.
Then from there, you've got a couple more prototype cars with the JDC Miller Motorsports and Performance Tech Motorsports. Then we finally get to our GT cars in 24th, which are 5 seconds behind in lap time, and they are with the Porsche 912 in Bergmeister, Bomber, and Malkalaki.
Then, Lammy, Turner, Lada, Dalla and Lana are racing in that Aston Martin as well. Tandy, Pillay, Lieb were in the Porsche North American. Magnussen, Garcia, and Briscoe were in the Corvette Racing.
Then after that, we've got the Racing Competition with Kaffer and Regan. Now, there will have another driver for racing, but those were the only two to practice. Then the 25 BMW team in Amberlin, Warner, Faras, and Spiegler. Still the GTLM cars all the way through until 33, where in 34th you have your first GT Daytona. So all of the GTLM cars right up against each other.
Mm-hmm.
In the first one with GTD
is Goosen, and then Bleekenmolen and Carter and O'Reilly's Motorsports. I'm not sure what that's powered with.
I think the 33. Well, I'll double check that, but I believe the 33 is a Porsche.
Okay.
Then
you had Goosen again in the 93.
Mm-hmm.
So another Riley Motorsports, and then in 58, in the number 58 car, you had Snow, Henley, Dempsey, and Inglenook, I think is what his name was. And they were lapping at a minute 47.433. So if you take a look at that car, which is, I'm not going to say one of the slowest cars out there, but they are right now 8 seconds behind the Daytona prototypes.
In 39th, and they're racing in a Porsche for this team. Dempsey has had a team in sports cars before. Mm-hmm. He's a big fan, but also an actor, so can't race as much as he wants.
No.
Then you've got the TRG, let's see, 30.
Yeah.
39th is, no, that's what we just did. 40th, we have the Flying Lizard, another Porsche.
They made a lot of headway or a lot of buzz about their name a couple of years ago. They were class leaders, if I remember correctly. I can't recall if they actually finished in P1 for their class, but they certainly made a good run for their money.
Mm-hmm. You've got Flying Lizards, the Alex Job Racing 22 with McNeil, Keane, Davis, and Von Goosenben. All the way down here, you've got the rest of GTDs, and then final cars here. All the way, we have 53 competing cars. And now the one that surprised us was the prototype number 1 of Sharp,
Delazzi, Heinmenzer, and Hansen. That was the Tequila Patron ESM.
Yes, another team that competed well in the prototype class, even winning 2 races, but did not post a lap for practice.
Didn't post the time at all over the full 2-day period. So that was a little concerning.
So, but I'll have a link to the full list here so you can check it out for yourself. And then I do want to mention that with last year, we did have a pretty wild incident in a team with the 99 Gainsco Daytona prototype and one of the Ferraris. In the early stages of the races, the 99 Gainsco car was leading and came across one of the slower Ferrari prototype Ferrari GTs, and just hit it in the rear massively. The car was totaled, and the driver did suffer some injuries. But he is recovering now. Sadly, the Gainsco team has pulled out indefinitely. No further update on when they would come back. I hope to see him back because they had Dan Gurney's son, Alex Gurney, racing with them. And we're always, for me, a team to root against, but at the same time, respect. So all our best wishes with them in future endeavors.
Yep. Okay, it's time to get your DVR ready. Now, with the 24 Hours of Daytona, the Rolex 24, you are going to have some great coverage. 2 o'clock is going to be the start of the race. So at 2 p.m. on Fox, you'll be able to tune in and watch 2 hours. Then they're going to continue coverage on Fox 2. That's going to start at 4 o'clock, and that'll run until 8 p.m. Then you're going to roll back over on the Fox network to Fox Sports 1, and from 8 until 10, they'll carry the broadcast. And for junkies like you and I, if you go to IMSA.com from 10 p.m. until 7 a.m., you'll be able to watch live coverage on IMSA.com. And the commentary there is going to be on...
It's going to be the Motor Racing Network radio broadcast. Okay. So you'll get to hear the voices of like Eli Gold and their normal commentators while watching the live feeds from IMSA's website.
Awesome. and then from 7 a.m. until 2:30, from 7 a.m. in the morning until 2:30 in the afternoon, you'll actually get to see the complete coverage on Fox Sports 1.
And the commentators you'll hear through their Fox's broadcast will be with Bob Varsha and Brian Till as the play-by-play. Then you'll also have analysis with Justin Bell, Calvin Fish, and Tommy Kendall. Pit reporters of Chris Neville, Matt Yoakum, Jamie Howe, and Andrew Marriott in the pits. So it's going to be a good cast. They're the guys you'll hear throughout the entire season. Mm-hmm. Dorsey Schrader will be back for Sebring as well, for commentation as well.
Sounds great. So
we've covered everything that's going to be going on and how you can watch it. Now, who do you think we're going to win?
Well, that's always the fun part. It's how a lot of money exchanges hands every year, and I'm just going to go with my gut, which we've all seen that. The team that I'm looking for in Prototype, I am looking for Wayne Taylor Racing to put it all together this year with the Chevrolet. I think Ricky and Jordan have done a good job. Obviously, Max Angelelli knows what he's doing. He's going to be there for 4 of the races this year, and then Jordan and Ricky are going to run all 10. So I think Wayne Taylor, I'm going to go that way with the Dallara Corvette.
Well, I like your pick, although I'm leaning more towards the Action Express team. They won last year. They dominated a lot of the races and won the championship. Rule changes, there weren't that many.
No.
I don't see why they can't repeat. They're gonna have to have luck on their side, but once again, fastest through practice. They've shown the pace. Mm-hmm. They can just keep it in their car together. I think that's who's gonna win.
That's cool. Prototype Challenge. I liked the series, the one engine, the one car class. The biggest thing is, who do you go with? You go with Starworks, you go with Core, you go with RSR?
I'm leaning myself towards Core. They won a couple races last year. That's going to be my pick, just on gut reasons. I don't have the strong reasons I do with Prototype, with who I think is going to win, but I'm leaning towards Core.
And the crazy part about that is you take a look at that Core, I can't disagree with you with your pick. Barr certainly is coming to the party with a bang. They're bringing 2 cars. Mm-hmm. They're bringing some international flavor with Johnny Modem and Martin Plowman as drivers, as well as some local talent from here in America. They got 3 spots open. I guess if you can get some time off, you might be able to get down there for that. But I think it probably will be Core, but certainly BAR or Bar 1 is spending some money to try and make a splash here at Daytona.
Then with the GTLM, it's the factory team, the factory money. I'm going to pull for kind of an upset in a sense and go with the Aston Martins. Mm-hmm. They were the second fastest in practice. They're running the one car, and they're only really running in the endurance races this year. So they're going to put all their focus in that, and I think they can pull it out.
Well, I can't really disagree with your logic, but I'm going to pull for the Corvettes, Corvette Racing. They proved that they can do it. It's time for them to get back on the podium.
Now, are you going with the number 3 car or the 4 car?
See, that's really kind of. I guess it's kind of hard to not root for Jan Magnussen. He certainly knows how to drive a race car.
Mm-hmm. Then with the GT Daytonas, made an error earlier saying that the teams that were the fastest were the Porsches, but it turns out it's actually the Dodge Viper teams.
Riley Motorsports,
which being a big fan of the Vipers, I'm liking them. They're going to be running all the races this year too, which is nice. So I'm going to go with actually the 33. Which is the team that will be running all the races, while the 93 will be just running this race here.
Well, the thing that I like about this series is such the large diversity. I mean, you take a look, you've got a Porsche running a 4-liter V6 and a Dodge running an 8.3-liter V10 and an Audi running a 4.6-liter V8. I'm going to... There's a lot of Porsches in there, Tom.
Yeah. There is a lot.
Well, what do we got to lose? Let's go with Riley Motorsports and the Dodge and the Viper GTR3, the 8.3 liter V10.
So we can agree on that one. We're rooting for
Can't
the
agree
Vipers.
on that one. Gonna go with that one. I'm gonna go with the 93 team.
Going with 93. So at least we got a different chance on that one.
That's right. Cover all our bases.
Exactly. Well, I think that really covers all our coverage for this race this weekend.
That sounds good.
It's going to be a lot of fun to watch. Tune in next time for our analysis of the full race. It will be one of our longer episodes because there'll be a lot to talk about, and as well as a little bit of a preview for the Sebring 12 Hours.
Okay.
So,
well, that sounds good. This is Skip Kowski.
And Captain Tyler here.
Hopefully we'll have a photo finish.
Exactly.